Hi, everyone. As you can see, once more, we are doing an interview. I am thrilled today to be joined by Kaare Andrews, who many of you may know from much of his artwork, his writing work, Spider-Man, and of course, much more. I'm thinking about the Marvel Mangaverse stuff. You can go on and on. Also, he's done some directing work, and he has been good enough to join us today to talk about many projects, but also specifically Spider-Man and Wolverine, which is coming out soon with Mark Guggenheim that you're working with, right?
That's right. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, that's right.
So can you tell people a little more about it outside of just Spider-Man and Wolverine? Although I know that that's enough for many a person.
That's the pitch. The pitch is Spider-Man and Wolverine. That's the pitch. But I guess what else would you want to know? Well, it's we're taking the two characters in present day and we're kind of overlapping them and mashing them up, and they're going to be joining forces for a specific mission. They'll be fighting bad guys. They'll be fighting each other. They'll be fighting for each other against each other. It's just a mishmash of when you put these two characters together, what happens? They're actually a pretty good mix because PD is such a kind of like a different man than Logan. So
Mhm.
that interplay is naturally kind of an odd couple situation. The grumpy tough guy and kind of the bright, inquisitive, kind of nerdy Peter Parker.
You've drawn Spider-Man a lot and a lot of different ways throughout the years.
Yeah.
Is he one of your favorites to draw?
Oh yeah, he's one of my. He's probably my favorite character. Like he's the character I grew up watching on TV, and then when I started buying books, he was always a draw. And then really, my peak collecting fandom phase was the
Mhm.
McFarlane Spider-Man era, and
Mhm.
my favorite books have always been those books. My favorite character to work on has always been the character. Here's a weird fact: is when I broke into Marvel Comics, I think I was the same age, height. I don't know about weight, but I was basically I basically was like the Peter Parker in the stats in the database, whatever, in the Marvel Universe book. So it's pretty fun. And then my first covers I did for Marvel were some of my first ones were Spider-Man covers, and I really pushed hard to start writing Spider-Man as quickly as soon as I could, as soon as I broke in.
Mhm. What was something that you wanted to bring to Spider-Man?
Well, I just naturally had always felt a kinship to him. Like I love that he tries real hard and he screws up as much as he saves the day.
Mhm.
But he's still, he's a little bitter, a little resentful, but he's still pretty good natured and pretty like trying. He tries so hard.
Mhm.
I love that about him. And he's got, he can swing and do flips and shoot little strings. He's not overpowered. Like I think the one superhero who I've always had a hard time relating to is like a Superman who's just can do everything.
Mhm.
In some movies he can like reverse the spin of Earth to
Yes.
reverse time. Like it's like when you're that level, it's hard for me to connect to your daily struggles in life. But when you're struggling to pay rent and you have a you're trying to find a girlfriend or keep the girlfriend or all that stuff just feels so
Mhm.
relatable to me. And then Wolverine, I mean, he's probably the most famous Canadian superhero, and being from Canada, that
Mhm.
was always a hallmark for me. And he's probably the yin to Peter's yang, where he's like just visceral, vicious, just feral, animalistic,
Mhm.
has a dark past, just does what needs to get done. But he's also a very romantic character. He's always fighting for the ladies in his life, whether they're
Mhm.
just friends or lovers or whoever. He's like, these are really my two favorite Marvel characters. So it's fun to do a book featuring both of them.
What do you like, what eras do you find you're bringing to the style of it? Because I noticed on the covers, there's kind of some of that late 80s, early 90s kind of bombastic energy going on.
Yeah. Well, in comic books, the right way to do it is to find a style, and
Mhm.
then that's your style, and you draw that way for your whole career, and you build a brand on that style. And I've just never been interested in that approach to doing comics. Like since I broke in, I'm constantly drawing one way or the other way, or painting, or doing kind of a cartoon animation thing, or doing traditional kind of like comic line art, or watercolor or oils or acrylics or CG or whatever. I like to
Mhm.
experiment quite a bit. and it keeps me interested and engaged in like making art.
Mhm.
So I try to keep my style consistent per project. And then when I switch projects, then I can kind of change and expand. And as you can probably see by the banners above and below us, this is a very like, this kind of like mood I'm in right now, aesthetically, is a very like early 90s, late 80s kind of like just before all the movies happened, when comics were not meant to be adapted into movies. They were just comics. And that's like my height of fandom. And I felt such a loss of that style of comic book making, that it was a vacuum, and it pulled me into like, oh, I want to do that again. Like I kind of missed, I broke in after that, but I want to bring some of that back, because to me, that's like both my sweet spot of collecting, but also I think it's the last time when comics were purely comics. Like they weren't soft pitches for a TV show or for a movie or for a deal or what. They were just making, and coincidentally, or not coincidentally, that also was, I think, the last height of fandom, where everyone was reading comics. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that mass focus and interest and celebration in comics was at a time when comics weren't trying to be other things. And for me, I want to bring that energy back into comics now. Like, why not bring that back now? Like, it's gone away, and I want to bring that back now. And for me, it's just so much fun to like, as someone who dances between styles, to like, I feel like probably more freedom than maybe another artist to like just do a thing. I can just do a thing. I don't have to like, oh, why is Mike Mignola drawing differently now? Like, it's not a question. I can just do a thing, and if I'm enjoying it, I think it shows in the work. So I'm just kind of like in this zone of like, not necessarily trying to recreate that look, but like bringing what I like about it into the now and doing it in a new way.
Kind of bringing that energy forward.
Yeah, bringing it forward, not stepping back, but bringing it forward. Totally.
I've heard a lot of people say that they feel that some of that energy in terms of comics being for and of themselves is returning. And are you seeing that in like some of the comic space, the fandom space, anything like that?
I feel like there is an interest in it returning. I don't know if I look at the comics on the shelves and the racks. I'm not sure. I don't know yet. But I think the creators that follow that feeling are going to find success, because I feel like we've kind of gotten lost in this idea of movies are the end goal of comics. And I think it's a big lie. And I think it's hurt a lot of creators and hurt a lot of comics and hurt a lot of fans. Because just imagine if your dream is to be a fireman, and so you are intensely swimming to one day become a fireman, because a fireman maybe he has to swim at some point. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would you focus so much on creating one thing? Just go make movies. Just become a director or a screenwriter or whatever, an actor or whatever. Like, it's not, it's like people started looking at it as a shortcut. And then that interest, that focus started shifting towards like trying to, in a roundabout way, get to Hollywood, or just celebrate the things you love through Hollywood, because Hollywood has been culturally for the past, since the 80s, such a draw, such a magnet, and there's so much money there, and there's so much celebration there. It's easy to get tricked into thinking that's your goal. But it's such a weird industry to like view success. And we've been doing this for about at least 20 years. True success in comic books can be defined sometimes as like, oh, someone else liked your idea so much, they optioned the material and they made it without you. Like, and then everyone loves that thing that someone else made with other people, not you. Like, I just think the power of comics is the comics themselves. Like, it's in the comics themselves. And I think it's no coincidence that the last moment where comic books were celebrated on a massive scale was when all that power and interest was in the comics themselves, when we didn't have an industry of people trying to chase something else, some kind of success or some kind of recognition or some kind or money or whatever, and using comics as the
as the springboard.
Yeah, it's just so weird and deranged. So I love when comics are like comics, like comic
Mhm.
language that has nothing to do with movies. Like
Mhm.
when panels are special effects letters, or
Mhm.
or that panel to panel storytelling that cannot be translated. And here's the funny thing. Let me know what you think, but I find the best comic book movies are actually when you take material that is not meant to be adapted into movies.
Where it's difficult because it forces a creativity that then
Yeah,
ends up altering the source material that adds a value to each that kind of makes them unique entities unto themselves.
exactly. It totally does it. Makes a filmmaker use their creativity, like you said, and just force that adaptation into being. Like the Sin City movies, Frank Miller made those books as a big fu to Hollywood because he had such a
Mhm.
rough experience with RoboCop 2 or whatever
Mhm.
it was. I don't know the exact specifics, but it was about that time. And he made Sin City not to be adapted. And because it was made not to be adapted, when it was adapted, it was a big event. And the first Superman movie, that was a movie that people didn't think you could really make realistically. Richard Donner one. Or
Mhm.
even just the first Iron Man's, or all that stuff. Like the things that are made not to be adapted make the best movies. And then, but when you think of comic books as R&D for movies, you make bad comics and you make bad movies, because you start making comics books that are like, oh look, this could be a movie because it already looks like the thing you're doing, right? It looks like the thing you're doing. You could make this a movie. It looks like that thing you're
Mm.
doing. It's a little different, right? It fits that gap.
It can
But
kind of alter the conceptual process of even the way that the books are laid out.
totally, it corrupts the comic books themselves. And then because they are close to movies, that gap between filmmaking and movies is so small that creativity you talked about, there's no need for it. You just, oh, okay, I guess it's a movie now. And I guess, like it kind of fucks it all up for everyone. Like it's not good
Mhm.
for anyone.
You've done directing as well. So, what do you feel is like the biggest difference between the two, having worked in both mediums? What's a big difference you've noticed?
Well, the biggest difference in directing is it's a collaboration and a communication and a compromise every day. And you work with 100 people every day. And every day is like, you know, a swarm of madness. And you
Mhm.
do that for, 20 days or whatever your shooting schedule is like. And you end up with a product. In comic books, you can do it like as a one-man army. I can literally
Mhm.
be in my studio here and do the whole thing by myself and do whatever I want. Really, even at Marvel Comics, Marvel gives you so much freedom to explore. At least for me, so much freedom and support to just try things. Maybe they're a little kooky, maybe they're a little crazy, maybe they're a little off the normal path, right? But you can just do it. But you're alone in by yourself. So it's the yin and the yang. Like one is like when I'm drawing comic books, I miss the madness of 100 people, and when I'm on set with 100 people, I miss being able to just do the thing I want to do now by myself and get it done and be creative by myself. So it's a yin and a yang.
How has the creative process been for this book, this series?
Oh, good. I mean, so I finished Spider-Man 2, and to be honest, I was a little burnt out from it because I was carrying a lot of I was writing it and drawing it and inking it. Um, and I just wanted to do a project. I was really interested in this aesthetic, this kind of like the retro nouveau kind of like thing. And I wanted to just do something, but I wanted to just not, I didn't want to carry the story for this, whatever I did next. I was like, I went to
Mhm.
Marvel like, hey, listen, I just want to draw the next thing. I want to give my writing mind a break and just draw a thing. And they came back to me with one thing, and it seemed off. Like it wouldn't have worked with how I want to do it aesthetically. It was like a licensed project. It wouldn't have made sense. And then they came back to me with this, and I was like, amazing. Let's do it. And there wasn't a writer attached yet. They said we're gonna find a writer, and then we're gonna come back to you. I knew the title, and then Guggenheim
Mhm.
was hired, and I was like, amazing. Let's go. So it's just been like really fun. It's just been drawing the scripts that Mark's been writing. So it's it's always different when you draw a script that someone else has written. You engage with it differently. It's your job as an artist to dig into the material In the same way that if I'm directing episodic television and I'm given a script, my job as a director is to dig into the material and extrapolate not just what's going on and what I'm being asked to do, but the job really is what do you really want? Like, what does the story really want me to do? Even if it's not on the page. It's like, because if the writer could draw it themselves, they wouldn't need me. So it's a mistake, I think, when you're an artist to just draw the word, just like when you're acting. A bad actor will just say the words on the page. An amazing actor will take those words and do it in a way, maybe not change a single phrase, but do it in a way that is surprising and new because they've invested in it in a different way. And so I do that with the art. When I draw books, I take the material, I try to just what's this really about? What's really happening? And then I try to do it in a way that's probably I'm trying to do it in a way that's truer than what's only written on the page. That's my task.
And what have you found that you've been bringing to this one?
Oh, I don't know. Just my thing. I just do what I do, you know. I try not to think about it too much. Like I try not to think like what it's
more of a subconscious kind of process.
Well, I'm just always like, what's going on here? What are the characters doing? What's a way to do it? When I'm doing my storytelling, generally I'm trying to, as visually, what's the last panel of the page? What's the primary panel of the page? What's the pacing? What's the rhythm? Sometimes I'll take 2 panels from one page and push them this way, push them that way, make a little room for a bigger image, or trying some just visual techniques of like storytelling. Like I think a writer, here's a good way to do it is sum it up. In comic books, a writer tells the artist the story, and then the artist tells the reader that story. And I think that's actually the way it works best.
So since you've done all different types of projects, like you've been saying, including ones where you're doing pretty much everything, when you're doing a project where you're the writer and the artist and the inker and everything, what's your favorite part of that process?
Well, the result is different because when you're the writer and the artist, there is no separation. I'm not telling myself a story and then I'm telling this story. It's not. It's more of a dream. Like even creating it, it's more like you're in the middle of a fog and things start crystallizing. And when I'm writing my own material, I'll go from it's more Marvel style, to be honest. It's like I'll go from a plot, and then I'll lay out my pages based off that plot. And as I'm laying out those pages, I'll start peppering in dialogue as it comes. And then when it's done, I'll go and do a full pass of my dialogue, and then I'll draw it. And then as I'm drawing it, if I want to change anything, I can keep changing things. So it's like waves against the beach, and each wave is like pushing that story more into completion. And because of that, you'll probably notice if you look at any kind of writer artist from Frank Miller to Jim Steranko to whoever, there is a bit of a difference in the result of those books. It's a bit more dreamlike. I love that feeling so much. Like when I read those books, it's a bit of a heightened, for me, it's very more poetic. When you draw someone else's script, it is a bit more like the result is more clean. And some people love that result more because it's more page by page, more plot driven. Sometimes things make more sense. And sometimes when you're in that dream world of a writer artist, sometimes things don't specifically make sense, but holistically will make sense. And in the other process, when they're more compartmentalized, just like television, a television series generally feels more complete than a writer-director movie like a David Eggers' The Lighthouse or whatever that. It's a similar thing where those writer-director projects can get a bit more dreamlike, and when you have separate people doing separate tasks, and both can create amazing comics. It's just what do you want to do, and what do you want the result to be, and what do you like reading? I know from your channel a lot of 60s romance.
I love reading it all. Like I am just very much in love with the medium of comics and the process of the creation of it, and the fact that it's this interwoven tapestry that stretches back decades, coming up on a century. And the fact that these characters have endured and that people want to keep coming and adding on to these stories and these experiences. And that's what really draws me to it. And then to be able to see that the character can still in some way be coherent or cohesive despite all of these different visions, that they can end up being cobbled together and that you can still recognize Wolverine or Spider-Man all of these years later, even though there are some people who have some very different ideas as to, like who he should be with, what should his job be, that kind of thing. But there's still a core there. And I find that just really fascinating to explore and jump back and forth
Yeah,
between.
isn't that crazy? I think comic books are it's the one medium where that has happened beyond any other medium. Like there is not, I guess maybe there are a couple novel series maybe that have changed hands a couple times, like Born Identity, whatever. I think some of the newer authors or whatever. But I can't think of really any other medium where there's been this much exploration on a monthly basis for decades on these
Yes.
singular characters by different hands, and each creator trying different things, sometimes crazy. And the craziest of them kind of fall off, and you kind of forget about, you kind of forget that Iron Fist had this sister that was really a plant clone or whatever. He kind of forgets. But the best of it kind of carries forward, and it is interesting that these characters can survive through different hands. And even when people try things that are a little maybe too crazy and catch people off guard, sometimes that stuff sticks and makes that character amazing. And sometimes it falls away, and you actually don't know what's gonna in the moment what's gonna stick and what's gonna fall away. Like who's gonna bring life to that character that propels it to the next 10 years. And I think it's kind of it's the only medium that I can think of that actually does that routinely.
It's one of the reasons why I'm so fond of continuity, even though it can be a bit of a mess. But just because there's something special about the fact that everybody's coming together and trying to create this never-ending tapestry story, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I can imagine if you took I don't know, Macbeth, and then had decades of other playwrights expanding the adventures of those characters, and then people getting brought back to life and dying again routinely. And I love comics. Comics are the best.
And it's like because there's such a generational fandom element to it, you do end up having lots of fans enter into the creative process. And that's really special because then you also get to see some of the things that made an impact that maybe at the time appeared really poorly received. And then that's really fascinating. Then people will come in and be like, no, actually, this was really cool. And now is my chance to show you why,
Yeah, no, totally. The funny thing is you can see a lot of, the creators in the letters column pages of the past. I mean, we don't really do that now, really, a little bit, but back then it was like a huge thing. You could see actually the names of the people working in comics now in those past. But I think one thing that I really find interesting about all forms of art is this idea of art received in the now has nothing to do with how the art is remembered later. And I think for me, the best example of that is The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. One of my favorite horror movies, but when it came out, it was nominated and won the Razzie for worst movie of the year. There was such a wave of hatred towards that movie that people don't even know happened anymore. Like people, it's kind of a cliche to like that movie now because it was so impactful. But at the time, it was doing different things. It was the first movie that employed a Steadicam. It was new technology. It had some very hyper real acting. It at itself was kind of this dreamlike movie. Even though Kubrick wasn't the writer, the way he directed, he was rewriting a lot of himself, and it was that weird kind of tone that I often like in my creative materials. And then contrast that with a movie I think it was called, I actually never watched it, but The Artist. Remember that movie, The Artist?
I do, yes.
Won all the awards, won the Academy Awards, huge. Everyone was celebrating it. I people don't even talk about it anymore. But in the now, it was, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. It's a celebration of the art, what art can be. And now it's just forgotten. It's like in the wind. It's like effervescent. So I think for any comic creator who's doing work now, it's a mistake to worry too much about how your material is being received in the now, because there is a greater role to play possibly for what you're doing now that has nothing to do with how it's received in the moment. And I think when you chase that success in the moment, you often create material that will float away and be forgotten. It's a strange thing. And when you create stuff, you want to make things that are amazing. You want things that people celebrate. You want to make things that, like, give you that same feeling you had when you were reading comics. Like that's that urge. Like art making is it's contagious. Like if you interact with amazing art, you get this urge in you to make art itself. It's inspiration. Like that spirit goes in you, and then you want to push it out and get it in someone else. But when you start chasing celebration more than the art, you just create, or you can create sludge, or you can create something that maybe it is celebrated in the now, but then just kind of at the 10 years from now, everyone forgets.
Do you think it's harder to find that balance these days when there's so much ease of access to feedback instantly, whether you want it or not?
Yeah. Well, that feedback is so interesting because feedback is also very important for you creatively. Like nothing is better for you as an artist when you're humiliated in public. Like when you do something that just doesn't work, like nothing is more valuable because it gives you so much feedback. Like, why didn't that work? Did it really not work? But again, it's not always true because look at The Shining again. The Shining was on a mass scale rejected by the audience of the day, not just murmurs, but like they won awards on how bad it was. Imagine if in comic books we had the comic book Razzies and like, hey, you won the worst comic book of the year. Congratulations. Like it can kill some people. Like that rejection is hard. And there's so much of it right now. And here's what I find, you tell me, Sasha, but we've all heard, and maybe you know this from your videos, I don't know, but when you are vocally criticizing something in entertainment, especially, it seems to get pushed up, whether it's movies or music or comics or whatever, video games or whatever. It seems to get pushed up into the algorithm. And I have some ideas why that might be. For instance, if you ran a entertainment streaming company and you were getting money by eyes on your product and you had these people making things for you to watch, what you may want to, as a programmer, as a coder, you may just want to tweak the algorithm so that every video that disparaged the movies or television or whatever kind of got pushed up a little, because you actually want those eyes on your stuff. You don't want the eyes on like Paramount or whatever. As a big company, you want to capture that audience, and the best way to capture it is to like kind of like,
I think it's a nice zeitgeist of human psychology and programming kind of combined, because it is there is a fun element, or there can be. Some people don't find any enjoyment at all, but a lot of people do find some enjoyment of kind of just like poking fun, or like, oh, this was wrong, or this wasn't so fun. This wasn't good, or like that kind of thing. And it can almost become a communal activity in and of itself. And then if you combine that with the fact that you can then incentivize it, it can create a very like perfect storm of an environment where those kind of things can end up shooting to the top, because a lot of the times it's very entertaining. Even sometimes for movies or like books or comics that I like, it's funny or fun to watch a thing where someone's just like, no, it was terrible.
I mean, comedy is never, I mean, there's nothing funny when you're supporting someone. Like that's not funny, like the funny is in the critique, and a critique in a fun and new way you haven't thought of. And it's so much fun. Like when I am hanging out with my buddies, we're constantly making fun of each other or whatever. Especially my brothers. I mean, my brothers were just like attack each other all day. And it's hilarious. But it is weird when it's incentivized. And so you're chasing this weird secret algorithm, and then you're getting rewarded with actual money. And then I hear YouTubers being like, well, we know what people want to watch. We make a good thing. People don't want to watch it. We have to attack people. But then also like, there also is, just humans were programmed to attract towards conflict because conflict could represent death in our real lives or danger. So anytime someone's raging, we instantly go, huh? Like
I
whether
know
it's in
it's like
public
you kind of
or online.
instinctively, like you kind of need to like sit up and pay attention,
Oh yeah, totally. And as a creator, I think it can be tough to deal with that stuff if you take it too personally. Like the way I look at it is I don't watch a lot of sports, but a little bit. But I'll come across the sports shows sometimes, and they're all like, "This coach needs to get fired," and like, "Why isn't this player playing?" And this guy's so trash, and he needs to get off. Like, I look at most YouTube stuff as kind of like that healthy sports banter about a sports team. And you're not yelling for the coach to get fired because you hate the team. You love the team, and you want the coach to do better, and you want the team to do better, and you need to vent a little bit. So I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy when people criticize my work or my friend's work or my company's work or what. I think it's totally normal, totally healthy. As a creator, the response to that cannot be trying to win that same group over, because just like, remember that one episode of The Simpsons where Homer got to design his dream car?
Yes.
That's what'll happen if you're trying to like win those people over. It can give you an indication of things not working, but I think the trick is to, if things really aren't working, okay, let me rethink what's going on. And for characters, it's always like, oh, let me get back to the core of Spider-Man or the core of Wolverine or the core of whoever. Like, I think the lesson in especially superhero characters that have been 60 years of continuity or whatever is always like returning to the core. And then we get to the core, whether it's Frank Miller Batman Year One or whatever, and then sometimes the core is missing from the landscape, and you'll get a big hit. I think like Ultimate X-Men, the Mark Miller stuff, that was returning to the core in a way, because he was actually returning to that kind of Claremont era of comics. And then once the core, everyone is like, oh, the core is great. Then you start iterating outwards again, trying new things, and you go too far, and then return to the core. And it's that stretch and pull, I think, is what is the engine of comics that keeps it going for so long.
Well, and I think it's very interesting because there are, with fandom and like comics and everything, at some point, like sometimes some people just fall off because your interests change or the thing moves too far outside of what you're used to. And I feel like part of what's been lost in some of the discussions is that that's no longer normalized, that's an entirely normal part of the process, and it's totally fine. And that there are some points where there are going to be things that you might not want to come back to, but maybe you'll want to come back in 5 years or 10. The exciting thing about it is that it's still going to be there. So
yeah. And also I think, naturally you make too many Westerns, more people get kind of bored of watching Westerns, and Westerns go away, and then someone brings it back. You're like, oh my goodness, that's so awesome. Let's jump back into the Western thing. Like, it's like there is a cycle of what's available and what's scarce and what people haven't done in a while. And, it is a natural thing. I think what I think we're really struggling with, or you let me know what you think, but it really is distribution. Like, how are people getting to books, and how are they not getting to books? Because, when I was a kid, comic books were in every 7-Eleven, every gas station. It was so easy to find something for cheap, buy it, bring it home, read it. And when I found comic book stores when I was a kid, it was like, oh my, there's a whole store with comics. Oh my, it's crazy. Okay. But we're kind of missing that portal for just normies in the real world. It's really hard to find comic books now. And I think that's that if I had power, money, I would be focusing on that really hard. Like, I think I've heard people suggesting putting comic books in dollar stores, and I think that would be amazing if we could get comic books into places at a price point where kids could buy them. Not just kids, anyone could buy them. I for a while I thought digital was going to be that key, but that's never really panned out.
I still have great hopes for digital, because I think especially for reaching the younger generations, just like that is the way that so much information is passed down, and it just takes up so much time that I'm like, if that could become the gateway, that would be a good way for people to be more introduced to it, because right now it is a bit more of a destination type thing. And if
Yeah,
you do have kids who are interested, you kind of have to make a trip out of it. It's not exactly the kind of thing where they can necessarily maybe walk to it or bike to it. It has to be like, okay, we're planning like a day
yeah,
and we're going to the store.
totally, totally. And maybe maybe digital will become that. What I've found myself is I felt that like I found that I like holding the paper in
Hmm.
my hands way more than I expected.
Hmm.
Way more. Like I started, reading digital books and it was fun, but I just missed like holding paper in my hands.
Hmm.
And maybe that is something that kids won't care at all, but my kids still read books on paper like
I
my
think there's actually
yeah,
potential for a double market there, though, wherein that
totally.
you can read it first, and if you really like it, I think that will separate for the things that you really like to be like, I actually want to physically have this. Because
Yeah.
I know that's what I do. Where there's some things where I read, I'm like, okay, that was good, but do I want to take up the shelf space
Right.
and the
Right.
things and actually put them physically in the world?
Yeah. Well, also the weird thing, I mean, comics, there's a whole collectability part of comic books, which makes
Yes.
it more unique than books or novels, or I mean, novels a little bit, but not really. It's like the only it's like a strange mix of like Pokemon cards or Beanie Babies, but with
Hmm.
actual like
On the
material.
inside.
On the insides, there's like material is those are characters and stories and passions and artistic expressions that are bound in it, intertwined with this collectible kind of gambling, almost
Hmm.
gambling kind of. And it's the really only medium where I think those two have existed copacetically since I don't know when, the 70s
Hmm.
or 60s or whenever people started actually putting value on these back issues.
Hmm.
So we can't, if we go straight digital, we lose that whole collectability angle. So we can't always go straight digital, but
Yeah. Well, I know that that's one of the things they're still working on just in general in the digital space is proper digital ownership, which is, a conversation you hear come up a lot of the times with video games and surrounding things like that, where they're just like, you don't own it and we're going to delete it
oh
now. And it
right,
becomes
right,
like
right,
a whole thing.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. All the movies I buy now are digital, and I don't own them. I have a a right to watch them for until they revoke it.
Yeah, until I decide that the service doesn't exist anymore or something like
Yeah.
that. You were talking about the importance of like feedback to the artist and how a negative experience can end up being something really positive creatively. Have you ever had that happen for you?
Oh yeah, all the time, all the time. I'm trying to think of an example, but what here's a weird thing that happens in comic books, and
Mhm.
maybe you let me know what you think. But what often happens in comics is, as a creator, that negative reaction from fans doesn't happen with comic books that people aren't buying and aren't reading. In
Mhm.
a strange sense, and I've kind of noticed this from way back when, the the giant negative cry often is associated with a creator who is elevating and skyrocketing and actually doing the work of their
Mhm.
lives. So whether, and you can think of this, whether it was Rob Liefeld in maybe some of the 90s, where some of it was like his Captain America, Avengers Reborn era.
Mhm.
There was a huge negative cry while he was succeeding beyond belief.
Mhm.
Same thing happened with Bendis. And when he was at the peak of his game, there was also an associated negative cry. Mark Miller, people forget Mark Miller, and at least when in my comic book stores, there was a kind of a big negative reaction to when he was doing his peak work at Marvel.
Mhm.
It often associates with the level of success you're achieving, almost in a weird way as a creator. The bigger the negative reaction to your work, it's actually probably an indicator that people are paying it more attention than they ever have before to what you're doing. And so
Mhm.
it's a bit of a trick because it can really affect you if you let it.
Mhm.
Having millions of people you don't know scream at you about what you're doing wrong.
Mhm.
But then in retrospect, again, shining many years later, that same work, and this happened to John Byrne, this happened to um, any giant name creator, when they've had a huge negative outcry, almost at the same amount as when they were achieving giant success. It's a very strange thing. The smaller negative cry it's tricky to interpret because sometimes it is like the most stinging negativity are the ones that have truth in it. If there's an embedded truth there that you know is true and someone calls it out, that's what's going to hurt you. You know,
Yeah.
like if someone was to this video, is like, oh, he's dressed like a clown again. Like, well, obviously I'm not dressed like a clown. It's a black t-shirt. I can't get any more nondescript than a black. So it wouldn't affect me. But if someone was like, oh, he's wearing another stupid hat. Well, I do wear these hats like every day. And it'd be like, oh yeah, I feel a little weird about it, but it's just my thing. So it's, you look for that biting, stingy little side comment that pokes real truths in what you're doing. So as an artist like myself, maybe, you know, I approach things very muscularly, and sometimes I get a little out of control, and there's different ways to draw. Some people they build little puppets and then they place the puppets on stage, and it can look really good because you're very consistent with your characters, but it can also look very flat and stiff and lifeless. Another way to do it is a bit more like Frazetta or John Buscema, where you're like sculpting scribbles on the page, and it gives you great, amazing gestures and dynamic poses, but it can get a little out of control, and sometimes things can get a little bit bananas and off, and then your task is to rein it in. So one is like meticulously building little miniatures and then painting out, and the other is like slapping down the clay and like honing in. And I'm a little bit more on this side because it's more fun for me to like throw stuff against. So, you know, you can't, because as an artist, you're always trying to see through your drawing, like what it could be, not what you're doing. You're drawing towards what it can become. You're not drawing towards what's now. And so sometimes if you leave that piece of art too soon, it never becomes a thing you had in mind. And you think it's in your mind because you've drawn through it as you're drawing it. And it's only like a week later, they're like, oh my gosh, like that was nowhere near what I actually thought I was doing at the time. And some of that stinging criticism can be something like that. But it really is like, as a creator, I think the stinging, biting criticism that really hurts is the valuable criticism. And that chorus that just kind of rises up could be the false shining criticism of the day. It's hard to tell and hard to navigate. Again, the answer really is like return to. So if you're an artist, if you're checking just the art, it's like, okay, I got to just return to like the core. Like, what am I trying to do? Like, I just need to focus on making something good, like making it great. What does it take? It's panel to panel. Maybe it's gesture. Like, I just got to get that gesture right. Maybe it's hands. I just got to make something better. No matter what the criticism is, it could be something else. Just like life. If you got criticized, right? Listen, you don't have a job. You're overweight. You're at video games all day. You're unkept. You haven't showered in 3 days. What are you doing with yourself? That's a lot to take in. How do you fix all those things at once? How do you approach that? It's too much all at once. Just give up. But you could just choose one thing. If you just choose one thing and just did that right now, it could be anything. It's probably take a shower. That's probably the first thing. If it's just like any criticism with art, it's like, okay, I'm hearing 30 different things. It's too much. I'm overwhelmed. I can't handle it. Well, I can just like focus on drawing really good hands today. And the funny thing is, once you start focusing on doing that one thing, it iterates outward. Like if you're kind of like, you know, if you take that shower, well, you may just wash your clothes. You've washed your clothes. You may not play video games for the next hour or so. You may be washing your clothes, and they iterate out. So instead of trying to fix all these little things, because again, that's the chorus, and there may be truth there, but like, what's that one? And if you're a writer, it's the same thing. Like if this doesn't make sense, and this contradicts that, and this character would never do that, and oh my god, this is the worst comic book of the year, and we're writing articles or making YouTube videos. It's the worst. What's the one thing you can do as a writer? Well, you could just do a expert monologue on this one page. You could take that time and just like spit out some kind of truth through the lens of that character that they notice on this situation, this one time for this one situation. And if you have that amazing crystal clear monologue on that one page, it will make that whole book rise up. And when that book rises up, well, maybe that whole series will rise up. Like there's always one little thing you can just attack with like just intensity. What do you
No,
think?
for sure. No, for sure. Because when you receive like it's the same with you get lots of criticism on YouTube and stuff like that
Yeah,
in the comments. And it's just learning to sift through which ones have value versus which ones don't. And I
yeah,
still remember one distinctly. It was from years ago and it wasn't even that bad, but it was because it had that little grain of truth in it. It was like,
right.
"Ugh, this girl, she takes forever to get into anything. She's so boring." And I was just like, how dare you? But then at first, like, that was the knee jerk reaction. But then I was like, you know what? I do actually take a long time to jump into things. And so it kind of altered some of the scripting process. Like, no, I could get to the point a bit faster, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to get past that initial, like, that was mean
Yeah,
to get there. But there's value in that too, and in not entirely tuning all of that out because there is some worthwhile stuff in there. But then it's just about
yeah,
trying to, discover, separate the wheat from the chaff, as it were.
yeah. There's like when you work in film, you always get notes, like notes. Anytime you write anything, and the way to address it in film is because the notes don't often make sense because you're getting a lot of story notes from a lot of people who aren't writers in film, a lot of
Mhm.
producers, a lot of execs or whoever, and they're trying to solve the problem for you they see on the page, and they give you a very specific note, and often those notes make no sense, and you're like, well, I can't do, like, if I did this exactly, it would just ruin everything.
Mhm.
But you learn that the notes are actually very helpful. They're often just not the specificity of the note has nothing to do with the problem. And so
Mhm.
you don't write the notes, you write under the notes.
Mhm.
You look at the area that people are flagging and you
Mhm.
rework that. And
Mhm.
I think that's just life.
Did you find that you had to rein yourself in or hone in for this work for Spider-Man for, like, making them dynamic, or did you find that it was more of a free-flowing kind of process?
Well, I'm always pretty bananas. So when I throw down lines, it's always crazy. And then I'm always trying to rein it back in. But with Spider-Man and Wolverine specifically, I again, I want to take some of that energy from the past and I want to
Mhm.
bring it forward.
Mhm.
So in issue 2, I've got, like, spoiler alert, a double page splash where you have to turn the issue sideways.
Nice.
Because I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that in like 30 years. And I was like, I got to do this. Like, I got to do this now. Like before I see someone else. I haven't seen that happen in, maybe some people still doing double page spreads, but I haven't seen that weird, like, double
Mhm.
page 90s thing. So I'm looking for opportunities like that to use new language to, like, bear down, to, like, bring back some of that energy in new and different ways.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not looking to recreate what has been done. It's just like fashion. If you look at
Mhm.
right now, it's like so much 90s fashion is getting pushed out. And it's not the same, but it's you can tell the inspiration, those big baggy 90s jeans that
Yes, but
kids are wearing.
they're slightly more tailored this time. So
Totally, totally. Yeah. So they're just taking that energy and pushing it now. And that's what I'm trying to do in comics. And I'm always trying to, like, push whatever weird, like, I did Hulk covers when I first kind of broke into Marvel, and each issue was a bit of a pop culture riff off of something, like in a
Mhm.
kind of like an homage cover, and that no one was doing them at the time, so it was kind of a new thing. But I was literally just taking my favorite things and just, I love Norman Rockwell, I'm gonna do a Norman Rockwell cover. Oh, I
Mhm.
love Maurice Sendak, I'm gonna do a Maurice Sendak cover. Oh, I love cereal boxes, I'm gonna do a cereal box cover. Oh, I love Apocalypse Now, I'm gonna do Apocalypse Now. I was just
Yeah.
literally just, like, trying to, like, shovel in all the things I love and put them in a thing that was a kind of a where I could just spend some time with that thing
Mhm.
I love. And I think even if no matter how you're drawing, if you can find the things you love and shovel them onto the thing you're doing in whatever way, in whatever style, whether it's realistic or cartoony or whatever, as long as you're putting your passions onto the page, I think you'll find some level of success. That's what I think.
I love the fact that it's gonna have to turn on its side. It's fun because there are a lot more books these days that are starting to play again with the physicality of actually holding the book itself, which does add to that inherent value and reading experience that's already there when you're holding it. But then when you have those moments, it kind of reminds you that there is that unique
Right.
aspect that you wouldn't get if you were reading it digitally, because then it would just be annoying. You'd have to, like, flip your phone, but, like, you can actually physically
Yeah.
do it with the book.
That's the worst part. The worst part about digital comics is the it kills double page spreads.
Yeah.
And Like I did an issue of Iron Fist where I had a series of interconnecting double page spreads for the final moment of the book. One punch across, I forget how many pages, either 6 or 8. Just one punch across 8 pages. I'd never seen it before. I wanted to do it. I wanted to try it out. And I thought it was pretty cool. In the digital space, I think it doesn't work at all because you're like just like, what's going on here? But holding it in your hand, like the page turns for me as a comic book storyteller are so important. And each page turn, at the end of the page, there should be a reason to turn the next page. And digital comics works well with digital comics if they're single page storytelling.
Yeah, if they're like vertical.
Yeah.
Then.
But when you try to play with the format, it gets a little nutty.
Yeah, they did some fun stuff with that with some of the Marvel Infinity comics where they'd have like Wolverine falling, and then because that is actually a vertical motion, you can really play with it in that way. So it's really about using each medium to its full potential.
Yeah, but again, this is why I think, there is going to be a renaissance of comic book language storytelling. Now that I do think a lot of creators are kind of stepping away from this movie thing. Because that's not like, I didn't fall in love with comic books because I saw it as R&D for a movie. I didn't fall in love with the book at the store. Oh, this will be a movie one day. I better buy it. Like that's nonsense, and it's false, and it's a lie, and it's a lie that creators tell themselves. It's a lie that publishers tell themselves. It's a lie that editors tell themselves, and it is like time to stop the lie. Like it's not true. It's not true. You're devaluing yourself. If you're editing a comic book and you're saying we are only R&D for movies, that's a lie, and you need to stop because you are devaluing your own work. If you're an editor, you're putting together a book with creators, you're creating a whole thing yourself. That is the comic book, and that is the thing that matters. And if it's an easy lie to tell you because it's really the movies telling you don't matter. And that's the trick, because the trick of movies is to suck up all that energy, suck up all that fire, suck up all that passion from all the little engines, and then monetize it and make all the money, and maybe you'll get a thanks at the end of the movie. Like that's the trick. The reality is comic books are so amazing because they are often single source engines, whether it's one man or maybe up to 6 people, maybe. The movies can be thousands of people working on that thing. But comic books, it's like small teams, and those small teams have to generate a lot of heat. And to generate that much heat means the creative force is actually more powerful, outmatches film by a fucking million, because film, it's aggregating all these little engines, and you get all the notes. It's very guardrailed. It's like, oh no, this is the structure. Oh, this is the thing. Oh, this is the market. Oh, this is the window. This is what we have to earn. It's all, but you need this amount of blah, 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 blah. But in comics, it's really like high heat engines creating this truth, this creative force that then is sucked up by the movies. And if it's hot enough, they can suck it up and make a lot of money. But that's not R&D. That's the opposite. That is you creating something so hot that the heat will survive this process, and they can use that heat to make something new. That's not R&D. That's different. That's like, this is the life here, and this is like the vampire. Like it's, like that. I think it's the trick. But really, I want like everyone to know this, like creators, editors, fans. If you love comic books, it's because you love that high heat combustive force that cannot be made by a big movie and cannot be made by a big TV show. And so it's a lie to think like, oh, my real success is if someone else options my material and then they go make it by themselves. Like it just drives me crazy when I hear anyone talk about like the art of comics is R&D for something else. It drives me bananas.
No, because there is something so truly unique about the comic book art form. And that was one of the things I remember when I first got into it, because I got into it later in life. And that was just, there was something.
How old are you?
When I fully got into it, I would have been about 19, 20 or so. And my first one that I remember buying was Hush, the trade paperback.
Yep.
And I went in, I recognized all the characters for one thing, but then like going through and seeing all of just those big spreads and like the Jim Lee art, how big everything felt. And honestly, how off the rails some of it was, like Poison Ivy is taking over Superman. It just felt really fun and unique. And then from there, like going in and seeing all of these other things, there is just an energy to it. And then when you get deeper and you start to go into some of the other spaces, into manga, into European comics, you're reading like Jodorowsky things and the Incal, and it's just so big and it's just really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good age. A lot of people kind of discover comics at about that age. I think there's like windows. There's the kid window, there's that late teen, early 20s window, and then there's another window that's like kind of like more closer, more middle aged, 30s, mid 30s, 40s, where they kind of like just as on a whim. I actually met a bunch of people that started buying comic books just because of Whatnot. They stumbled across a Whatnot, and they just kind of like it's weird. Like, so I don't really do shows, but I've done a couple shows this year,
Mhm.
and at each show there was a few people that kind of started collecting comics or buying them at all because
Mhm.
they've discovered Whatnot, and they kind of like,
Mhm.
so late at night they just were looking for something to do. They started watching these streams and thought, oh, I used to read comics, or I remember this, and then
Mhm.
they kind of got into the energy of it, and they started buying comic books, and it's like I think it's the first time I've heard it. I think right now we currently degrade that a little bit. We degrade Whatnot, we degrade eBay Live. It's a bit like,
Mhm.
oh, these are scammers, and they were kind of like just they're in the variant cover business and like whatever. But it actually is bringing in readers and collectors, and I think that's something valuable there that shouldn't be ignored. Like, here's my prediction. I
Mhm.
predict I predict that within the year, maybe this already happened. Maybe Rob Liefeld already danced around this a little bit. I predict within the year, someone will debut a book just on Whatnot as a first window. Someone will debut a new book, new material just for the Whatnot audience as a first window of distribution. Just like, in movies
Mhm.
we go theatrical, streamer, paid, streamer free, whatever. Those are the windows, right?
Mhm.
And comic books is really just like comic book stores and digital at the same day.
Mhm.
But I think I can see a spot growing in this direct to consumer collector space where it's like maybe Whatnot becomes a first window, and then maybe EB Live is a second window, and then maybe the comic stores are a third window, just to kind of start generating buzz, like the
Mhm.
way they used to take out like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That movie was really built on in person per theater showings, like
Mhm.
one at a time. It was a big nationwide roadshow of like in person theatrical screenings because the movie was too crazy for like a big
Yeah.
distributor to pick up. So I think there's many routes of like where comic books are going to go in the future. I do think there's something there. There's a lot of energy at the conventions right now.
Mhm.
Tons of energy, tons of excitement, tons of like there's money flowing around. It's like I don't think the distribution of comic books is using these other energy points to their
Yeah.
fullest extent. And that's Whatnot streaming, that's in-person shows. What is that? What that means something. What's that going to be,
It's going to be interesting because people are coming to comics through different avenues, and that's exciting, but a lot of that is that it's getting the word out there. I see a lot of people coming from TikTok because
Yeah,
they
yeah, right.
they hear about,
Yes.
comics, and especially some of the newer ones. They're just like, I didn't even know that you could go to like the store and get these things.
Right.
And I went and like picked up all this stuff. And so you're really starting to see it. And it shows that if the information can get out there more, then there is
Yeah,
100%. Some people say that like, oh, like comics are dead or there was no interest. I'm like, that's not true. It's just not true at all. There is still lots of it out there. It's
totally.
just getting it to the people, the
Again,
information to the
these are
people.
these are like high heat creative engines, and I think people respond to it. Like there's a lot of truth in singular engines that are high heat creatively. And if you can
Mhm.
interact with that truth on TikTok or Whatnot, or you stumble upon a pop culture show in your town or whatever,
Mhm.
like you can really get the bug. And I think the hardest part is that comic books have only been to the stores for the past, I don't know, 20 years at least or whatever. And those stores are becoming less and less. It's harder to make money at the stores,
Mhm.
and they're hard to find. Some cities don't even have them. They're hard, they're kind
Mhm.
of, you have to know where to go, and you have to know how to get into it, and then you have to kind of like figure out how to buy comic books on they come out every Wednesday, and it's very complicated. I think Rob Liefeld is touching these things in a way that other creators aren't doing yet, and I don't think he's fully engaged in what that could mean. And you see Skybound, right, in their Kickstarters with the G.I. Joe compendiums and etc. Like that's so much, right? There's a lot of energy that we can't, or we haven't figured out how to properly access.
Fully channel. Yeah.
And once we can grab onto that energy, I think the next boom of comics is just around the corner, because we're in this like lull, and we feel like comic books are getting better, or I feel it. We're letting go of the movies a little bit, not fully yet, but a little bit. And there's these new means of distribution kind of like appearing. And I think it's just, we're getting ready for, I don't know what's going to happen next, but there's going to be something big is going to happen in comic books, I think, within the next 5 years. Like someone's going to figure it out, and it'll just, like, it's about primed to start exploding sometime in the next 5 years again. And I don't know how high it's going to go, because it could go higher than the 90s. That's my prediction.
Well, I think that there's definitely a lot of excitement around it. I see it, that people are excited to be excited, just even in general, like excited to be into something and be part of a community and be part of the group. And I think that a bunch of them are going to be excited to check out Spider-Man and Wolverine. And I really want to thank you for taking some time to discuss not just that, but, like art in the industry. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I think shows like yours are like the new form of, like, when I was growing up, it was the magazines, Comic Book Buyer's Guide, or all these different kind of little magazines you could only find in the shops to talk about comic books. And now it's like the shows and the podcasts, and even the Whatnotters. That's really, it's not just a retail spot. It's like people who hang out on those streams, and like our friends are building those communities. So I think your show is super important. And I think these other areas where people are finding a way to come back together after we've been kind of like scattered to the winds a little bit. Message boards aren't a thing anymore. Like I think we're kind of like,
those.
yeah, right. I think we're figuring out a way to come back and coalesce again. I think the world has really tried hard to just atomize us and send us to the winds for some kind of global control system. And I think the spirit of people is one of connectivity. And I think we are coming back, and I think your show is a part of that. So thanks for doing it.
Well, thank you for coming on, discussing with us.
All right, let's go buy some comic books. Buy the Spider-Man and Wolverine.
Do it.
Listen, don't just pirate the comic book. I know it's real easy. Russian pirate site. What? Oh, read. Forget about it. Read, forget about it. Just buy the book in your hands. Especially issue 2 is meant to hold in your hands, so you can do the proper double page turn thing. You can't do it on a Russian pirate site.
Thanks so much to everyone who made it to the end. And thanks so much to Kaare for stopping and chatting Spider-Man and Wolverine, and much, much more. Check that out when it drops May 21st, time of recording. And as always, there'll be more videos coming soon. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.